the scent of olive wood burning. Somewhere in the fold of distant centuries, beneath a sky impossibly dense with stars, an old voice begins to speak. You are sitting where earth meets stone, wrapped in wool that still carries the warmth of the sun it absorbed during the day. The fire crackles and whispers, and in its amber light, shadows dance along cave walls that remember everything. Before there was light to see by, before the first breath or heartbeat, before stone or water or the concept of ground beneath feet, there existed only chaos. Not the chaos of storms or battle or confusion, but something older, something complete in its incompleteness. An infinite absence, a waiting. Here, where time moves differently, the stories begin. Picture darkness without the possibility of dawn, silence that has never known sound, a space that extends forever in directions that do not yet exist. It was neither welcoming nor hostile. It simply breathed, if breathing is the right word for what emptiness does when it fills all of existence. Gaia came first, Earth herself, broad-bosomed, the old poets said, and you can almost feel what they meant, the sense of abundance and stability, of a presence that could hold all things without effort. She formed slowly, particle by particle, becoming substance where there had been none. Her body became the foundation, the possibility of place, of here instead of nowhere. Within that formless dreaming, something stirred. Not suddenly, not with violence, but with the patient insistence of mountains rising grain by grain over eons. The first shapes began to emerge from shapelessness, coalescing like honey pooling, like fog becoming solid, like thoughts forming in the mind of a sleeping cosmos that had just begun to dream itself awake. With her came Tartarus, though he remained below, deeper than roots could ever reach, a place of such profound depth that even speaking of it requires lowering your voice. A realm of essential darkness beneath the darkness, the lowest point in all creation. Every mountain that would ever thrust up toward sky, every valley that would cradle morning mist like a held breath, every field of wild grain bending beneath wind, every stone, every handful of dark soil, every grain of sand on shores not yet imagined. All of this was her body, her presence, her patient flesh becoming the world. And Eros emerged, not the cherubic child of later imagination, but something primal and necessary. The force that draws things together, that creates union from separation, that makes two become one, that ensures nothing remains forever alone in the dark. From her own substance, Gaia brought forth Uranus, the sky. Imagine him spreading outward and upward, spangled with lights that had never been seen before, creating the first ceiling, the first dome, the first sense of above. He stretched himself across all that existed, his presence the complement to hers, height answering depth, air meeting earth. From their union, children, the first generation born rather than manifested, emerging into a world still learning its own rules. The Titans came, 12 beings of enormous power and presence, each one embodying forces that would shape everything that followed. These first beings existed before sequence, before cause followed effect, before yesterday and tomorrow meant anything at all. They simply were present in that first slow awakening of everything, where he pressed down to meet her, where sky bent to touch ground in that first embrace, the world held its breath. There was Hyperion, who would father the sun itself, carrying within him the potential for light. Thea came luminous and fair, divine radiance before radiance had a name. Zeus and Crius, whose natures were subtle but essential, like the spaces between stars. Oceanus appeared, the great river that encircled all land. His waters endless, deep, cold in some currents and warm in others, moving always, patient as the turning of ages. His voice was the sound of waves, and his thoughts were as vast as his waters. Rhea formed like flowing water, like time itself made tangible, her very name a whisper of movement and change. Themis arrived, bringing with her the first concepts of law and order, the idea that actions might have proper sequences, that some things were right and others were not. Iapetus emerged, tall and strong, from whose line would spring both the defiant Prometheus and Atlas, who would hold up the sky, shoulders bearing unimaginable weight for eternity. Mnemosyne became memory itself, a living repository, holding within her vast mind every moment that had occurred, every word spoken, every gesture made, recording it all in chambers of thought that never forgot, never failed. Phoebe shone with silvery light, carrying prophecy in her eyes, seeing threads of future tangled with threads of past. Tethys joined with Oceanus, and together they would birth every river, every stream, every freshwater source that would ever flow across Earth's surface, veins of water carrying life into every corner of existence. But Gaia and Uranus created others as well, children who troubled the order of things. 3 Cyclopes emerged, brothers each bearing a single enormous eye in the center of his forehead, that eye capable of seeing things invisible to normal sight. Brontes, whose name meant thunder, Steropes, lightning, Argesh, brightness. Among these titans were 2 whose story would echo through all the ages that followed. Cronus, the youngest, clever and cunning, his mind always turning like wheels within wheels, and Rhea of the flowing grace, who would become his bride and bear children who would shake the pillars of heaven. They possessed knowledge of storm and flash and illumination, secrets of power that made them formidable and strange. Uranus looked upon these youngest children and felt fear bloom in his immortal chest. They were too powerful, too strange, too much. In his fear, he committed the first wrong, the first crime of the newborn cosmos. After them came the Centimanes, 3 brothers of overwhelming might, each possessing 100 arms and 50 heads. Their names Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges. Imagine them, these beings of multiplied power, able to see in 50 directions simultaneously, to reach with 100 hands, to hold and strike and grasp with force that made mountains seem fragile. Gaia felt them there, trapped in the darkness of her own flesh. She felt every movement they made in their imprisonment, felt their confusion and pain, felt the weight of them pressing against her from within. Her suffering grew day by day, a constant ache, a mother's agony at having her children stolen from light and freedom. He seized the Cyclopes and Centimanes and thrust them back down into the secret places within Gaia's body, forcing them into deep caverns beneath the surface of the world where they could not emerge, where their power would remain contained, where they could pose no threat to his dominion. She groaned with the burden, and the sound of her groaning was the first earthquake, the first trembling of the world's foundation. In her pain, she conceived a plan. From her own substance, she created a great sickle, forging it from adamant, a metal that had not existed before, harder than anything, with an edge that could cut through any substance, even the divine flesh of immortal beings. The sickle gleamed with potential, heavy and balanced and terrible. The Titans stepped back, one by one, unwilling to raise a hand against their father, against the vast sky that arched above them. All except Cronus, the youngest, stepped forward. Some say he did so from love of his mother, from compassion for her pain. She gathered her Titan children and spoke to them of her suffering. Her voice carried the weight of mountains, the patient strength of earth itself, but also the trembling of barely contained anguish. She asked which among them would be brave enough, strong enough, willing to free their trapped siblings and punish Uranus for his cruelty. Others whisper that he saw opportunity gleaming like the edge of the sickle itself, saw a chance for power, for dominion, for the throne of creation. Perhaps both were true. The human heart and the Titan heart contains multitudes. The sickle cut, divine blood spilled. Uranus cried out, a sound that rang across the empty spaces of the cosmos. And he pulled away, retreating upward into the high air, withdrawing from Gaia forever. The separation was complete. Sky and earth, which had been joined, now stood apart, and in that space between them, the world as it would become could finally breathe. That night, when Uranus descended as he did each evening to spread himself over Gaia in darkness, Cronus waited at the edge of the world. Hidden, silent, the sickle gripped in his hand, he watched his father approach. The moment came. Cronus struck. The blood that fell from wounded Uranus was not wasted. Where it struck the earth, life sprang forth. The Furies emerged, terrible and necessary, goddesses of vengeance with serpents coiling in their hair, their eyes burning with purpose. They would forever pursue those who committed crimes against family, against the bonds of blood, their presence a reminder that some wrongs demand accounting. There was room now for atmosphere, for clouds to drift, for birds to fly when birds eventually came to be, for mountains to rise without pressing against heaven's floor. Giants rose from blood-soaked ground, massive and fierce, their very existence a kind of ongoing violence. And where drops of divine blood fell into the sea's foam, mixing with salt water and wave, something beautiful began to form, though it would take time. From violence and sea foam, Aphrodite would eventually rise, goddess of love and beauty, proving that even cruelty can give birth to grace. It was a golden time, the poets say, and perhaps it was. Under Cronus's rule, the earth became generous beyond measure. Trees dripped with honey that required no bee to produce it. Streams ran with milk, sweet and nourishing. Grain grew without planting or tending, rising wild in fields that had never known a plow. Uranus departed to the highest reaches of the sky, never again to rule, never again to descend. Cronus took the throne. The age of the Titans began. Humans, who had emerged upon the earth by this time, lived without labor, their days peaceful and long, their deaths gentle, like falling asleep after a satisfying day and simply not waking, passing into soft eternity. But Cronus carried darkness within him. Both Gaia and the wounded Uranus had spoken prophecy, their voices heavy with foreknowledge. They warned him that as he had overthrown his father, so too would he be overthrown by one of his own children. Cronus took Rhea as his wife and queen. Together they presided over this age of abundance, this time when the world was wilder, younger, more generous with its gifts. When Rhea bore their first child, a daughter, Cronus looked at the infant cradled in his wife's arms and saw only threat. The baby's name was Hestia, and she was small and perfect and helpless. Rhea held her close, gazing at her first child with all the fierce love that mothers have felt since love began. But Cronus, driven by fear and prophecy, took the baby from her arms. The prophecy wrapped around Cronus's thoughts like chains, whispering to him in quiet moments, disturbing his rest, turning every peaceful hour slightly sour with fear. He had tasted power, had taken it with violence, and now he clutched it desperately, unable to imagine letting go. Despite Rhea's pleas, despite her tears streaming down her face, despite her cries that echoed across mountains and made the stones weep, Cronus opened his mouth and swallowed his daughter whole. Immortals cannot die. Hestia remained alive within her father's belly, trapped in darkness, conscious but imprisoned, waiting in a warm prison that should have been impossible. Rhea's grief was a physical thing, a weight that pressed on the world, a sorrow that changed the color of sunlight. The second child came, another daughter, Demeter, who would have become goddess of grain and harvest and the growing season. Cronus swallowed her as well, adding her to the living prison within himself. Rhea's heart broke again, the same wound reopening, never given time to heal. The third child, Hera, golden and beautiful even as an infant, met the same fate. Down into darkness she went, joining her sisters in that impossible captivity. The fourth child was Hades, the first son. Cronus showed no mercy, no hesitation. The boy disappeared into his father's throat, swallowed like the others. When Poseidon arrived, strong even as a baby, destined to command seas and storms, Cronus consumed him without pause. 5 children. 5 times Rhea had felt life grow within her, had endured the pain and wonder of birth, had held a baby in her arms for mere moments before watching that child disappear forever into Cronus's maw. As her time approached, Rhea traveled far from Cronus's palace, journeying to Crete, to the wild mountains of that island where caves pierced deep into living rock. She found a secret place, a cave on Mount Ida, or perhaps Mount Dicte. The old stories differ on small details but agree on what mattered. When Rhea felt the 6th child quickening within her, she knew she could not survive losing another. This one would live. This one she would save, no matter the cost, no matter the deception required. The cave was deep and sheltered, surrounded by ancient trees whose branches whispered in wind that smelled of pine resin and wild thyme. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, a patient sound, a measured counting of moments. She gave the baby to the nymphs of Crete, gentle spirits of nature who dwelt in forest and stream, who knew the secret ways of the wild. They accepted the sacred trust, cradling the infant with tender care. There, hidden from the sky and from Cronus's awareness, Rhea gave birth to her youngest son. She named him Zeus. From the first moment, there was something extraordinary about him. His eyes held intelligence beyond an infant's understanding. His tiny fingers grasped with unusual strength. Looking at him, Rhea felt hope for the first time since her sorrows began. To hide the sound of the baby's crying, which might carry on wind all the way to Cronus's ears, Rhea stationed the Curetes around the cave, young divine warriors who danced endlessly, clashing their spears against their shields in rhythmic percussion that drowned out any infant wails. They fed him milk from Amalthea, a divine goat whose milk was pure and rich beyond any mortal nourishment, milk that strengthened the baby, that helped him grow faster and stronger than any ordinary child. Bees brought honey, the sweetest they had, wild honey from flowers that grew in mountain meadows, and the baby thrived on this sustenance, growing visibly from day to day. With Zeus hidden and guarded, Rhea returned to her husband. She had taken a large stone and wrapped it carefully in swaddling clothes, bundling it to approximate the weight and feel of a newborn. When she presented this to Cronus, telling him their 6th child had arrived, he barely glanced at the bundle before opening his mouth and swallowing it whole, adding the stone to the children in his belly. The deception worked perfectly. Zeus grew in his hidden sanctuary. Months passed, then years, and the baby became a boy, then an adolescent, then a young man. He grew tall and strong, crackling with barely contained power, his eyes bright with intelligence and purpose. The sound of bronze on bronze, the stamping of feet, the shouted songs. All of this created a wall of noise that kept the secret safe. Cronus believed all possible threats contained, all potential prophecies prevented, and he returned to his rule, never suspecting that far away on Crete, a boy was growing who would undo everything. When Zeus reached full maturity, he left the Cretan mountains and entered the wider world. He sought Métis, a Titaness of extraordinary wisdom, one of Oceanus's many daughters. Her name meant cunning intelligence, and she possessed insight that could untangle any problem. The nymphs told him stories of his imprisoned siblings, of his father's fear and cruelty, of the prophecy that hung over his life like a constellation spelling out his destiny. Zeus listened to these stories and planned, his mind turning over possibilities, considering strategies, preparing for what must come. Zeus explained what he needed, and Métis prepared a special potion, a mixture of herbs and substances that would cause even an immortal stomach to rebel, to reject what it contained, to force everything up and out. Cronus's immortal body revolted against what it contained. His stomach heaved. He began to vomit, unable to stop, unable to control what was happening. First came the stone, which had been swallowed last, and it fell to earth where it would later be set at Delphi as a monument, a reminder of Zeus's cunning and victory. Then came Poseidon, emerging fully grown, powerful, his eyes flashing with the storms he would command. Hades followed, dark and imposing, carrying already the gravity of the realm he would rule. Hera came forth, regal and beautiful, her bearing queenly even in this moment of strange rebirth. Demeter emerged, ready to teach the world about grain and seasons. Zeus approached his father. Some tellings say he disguised himself as a cupbearer, a servant trusted to bring drink to the king, and that he offered Cronus a cup containing the potion. Other versions say he confronted Cronus openly, that they fought, and in the struggle Zeus forced the liquid down his father's throat. However it occurred, the potion worked. Cronus, weakened and shocked, rallied the Titans to his side. Most joined him, whether from loyalty or fear or simple resistance to change. But not all. Oceanus withdrew to his waters, declaring neutrality, refusing to fight against either side. Themis, goddess of divine law, sided with Zeus, seeing in him the future, seeing that his cause was just. Finally Hestia, firstborn and last freed, stepped out into light she had not seen since infancy. The 6 siblings stood together for the first time, reunited after years of impossible separation. They were young and strong and burning with purpose, with justified anger at what had been done to them. They looked at each other, recognizing kinship, recognizing alliance, recognizing destiny. The war that followed would shake the cosmos to its foundations. For 10 full years, the conflict raged, and those years were filled with violence on a scale the world had never witnessed. The gods made their fortress on Mount Olympus, the highest peak, a mountain so tall its summit pierced the clouds and touched the realm of pure sky. Prometheus, the far-thinking son of Iapetus, whose name meant forethought, also joined the younger gods, his vision extending far enough to see how this must end. From this height, Zeus hurled thunderbolts, though these early thunderbolts were crude compared to what would come later, manifestations of his rage and power. Poseidon, even without his eventual trident, struck the earth and raised waves, called forth earthquakes that split stone. Hades moved through shadows, appearing where he was least expected, striking and vanishing like a deadly thought. The world trembled continuously with the violence of their conflict. Seas boiled where fire met water. Mountains crumbled under repeated blows. The sky split with lightning, thunder rolling endlessly like a conversation of angry giants. Forests burned. Rivers changed their courses, fleeing from battlefields. The Titans fought from Mount Othrys, hurling boulders the size of hills, calling upon forces of nature that scarred the landscape and changed the shape of the world. Atlas fought with terrible strength. Hyperion blazed with solar fury. The Titan forces were formidable, experienced, confident in their power. Mortal humans, tiny and fragile, hid in whatever shelter they could find, praying to whatever powers might listen. Their brief lives overshadowed by forces so vast they could barely comprehend them. Zeus descended into Tartarus, journeying into the deepest depths beneath the world, where light had never reached, where the very concept of light seemed meaningless. There, bound in chains of adamant, the Cyclopes and Centimanes had waited for ages beyond counting, imprisoned in darkness, forgotten by almost everyone. For all their strength and determination, neither side could gain lasting advantage. The war might have continued forever, locked in endless stalemate, had Zeus not remembered those first children of Gaia and Uranus, the ones imprisoned so long ago, before even the Titans fully ruled. The Cyclopes, grateful beyond measure, wept at their liberation. They were master craftsmen, possessing knowledge of making that went beyond ordinary skill into the realm of divine creation. They forged weapons for the gods, working in darkness, shaping metal that had never existed before. For Zeus, they created the thunderbolt, a weapon of pure lightning, a spear of concentrated storm that could shatter anything it struck, that could pierce any defense, that radiated power and authority. For Poseidon, they forged the trident, a three-pronged spear that could command all waters, could shake the earth itself, could calm or raise storms at its wielder's will. Zeus found them and broke their chains, shattering the bonds that had held them since the world was young. He offered them freedom, a place of honor, roles in the new order he would create, asking only that they fight alongside the gods against the Titans. The final battle was cataclysmic. Zeus stood atop Olympus, thunderbolt in hand, hurling lightning that split the sky, that struck with precision and devastating force. The air smelled of ozone and burning, crackled with energy that made hair stand on end. For Hades, they made a helmet of invisibility, a cap of darkness that allowed its wearer to move unseen through any space, to become shadow among shadows. Armed with these weapons, joined by the Centimanes whose 100 hands could hurl 100 boulders simultaneously, creating avalanches of stone, the gods pressed their advantage. Poseidon wielded his new trident, striking the ground and raising earthquakes, calling forth tidal waves from seas miles distant, bringing water to drown his enemies. Hades appeared and vanished, his attacks coming from nowhere, impossible to predict or prevent. The Centimanes were a force unto themselves, an army in 3 bodies, each one hurling stones in endless barrages that darkened the sky, that fell like deadly rain. The Titans fought desperately, knowing they were losing, fighting anyway because they knew no other way to be. The earth itself groaned under the assault. Cracks appeared in the world's foundation. Fire spread across entire mountain ranges. The seas rose in waves that should have been impossible. The sky blazed with continuous lightning, day and night losing all meaning in the constant illumination of divine warfare. Zeus cast them down into Tartarus, into that abyss as far below earth as heaven is above it, into darkness so complete it seemed solid. There they would remain, imprisoned, guarded by the Centimanes who had helped win the war, who would ensure no escape was ever possible. Finally, inevitably, the Titans broke. Their lines shattered. Their strength failed. One by one, they were captured, bound in chains of adamant forged by the Cyclopes, chains that could never be broken, that would hold for all eternity. With the Titans defeated and imprisoned, the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, divided the cosmos among themselves. They cast lots, leaving the decision to chance or fate or whatever force guides such things. Zeus drew the sky and upper air, becoming king of gods and ruler of heaven. His position atop Olympus secured by might and by fortune both. Cronus was among them, the once mighty king reduced to prisoner, overthrown exactly as prophecy had foretold, exactly as he had overthrown Uranus before him. The cycle had completed itself, the pattern repeating, but Zeus would remember this and rule differently, would build something meant to endure. Poseidon received the seas, all the waters that covered and surrounded the earth, every ocean and wave, every current and tide, becoming lord of the deep and master of storms. Hades drew the underworld, the realm of the dead, the dark kingdom where mortal souls would come after life ended, becoming its somber king, its eternal warden. The earth itself and Mount Olympus were declared common ground, shared among all the gods, belonging to none and to all. The age of the Olympians began. Athena would spring from Zeus's head, born fully armed, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, her gray eyes seeing patterns and solutions others missed. Apollo arrived, radiant and beautiful, god of the sun and music and prophecy, bringing light and art to the world, his lyre creating melodies that could move stones to tears. His twin sister Artemis roamed the wild places with her hunting bow, protector of young creatures and wild things, her devotion to the untamed world absolute. Aphrodite, born from sea foam and divine blood, embodied love and beauty in all their forms, her power over hearts both mortal and divine matched by few. Ares represented war's brutal face, the violence and bloodshed, the rage of battle. Zeus took Hera as his wife and queen, though their marriage would be marked by conflict, by Zeus's many affairs and Hera's terrible jealous rages. The gods settled into their roles, their domains, their relationships with each other and with the mortal world below. These gods were not distant or abstract. They felt everything mortals felt, but magnified, intensified, freed from the constraints of mortality. They fell in love desperately, felt jealousy that consumed them, sought revenge that lasted generations, showed mercy that could redeem, made mistakes that echoed through ages. Hephaestus, the smith god, created wonders in his volcanic forge, crafting items of impossible beauty and utility despite his lame leg and scarred face. Hermes arrived quick and clever, becoming messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, patron of travelers and merchants and thieves, his winged sandals carrying him everywhere, his wit sharper than any blade. The myths that emerged from this age are countless as stars, each one a thread in the vast tapestry of Greek understanding, woven together into patterns that explained existence. Stories of transformation, of Daphne becoming Laurel to escape Apollo's pursuit, of Arachne turned to spider for her pride. Tales of punishment for hubris, of Niobe weeping for children slain because she boasted against the gods. Stories of love that transcended death, of Orpheus descending to the underworld for Eurydice, his music almost enough to bring her back. Quests for glory and redemption, Jason seeking the golden fleece, Hercules laboring to atone for crimes committed in madness. They walked among humans, sometimes in disguise, testing the hospitality and character of mortals they encountered. They took human lovers, creating children who bridged the divide between divine and mortal, heroes and demigods who would perform great labors and live lives of adventure and tragedy, whose stories would inspire and caution and teach. Listen now in the darkness of your room, and know you are connected to all those ancient listeners who heard these same stories, who found comfort in them, who used them to make sense of existence under the same stars that shine tonight. The details may fade as you drift toward sleep, and that is perfectly fine, exactly as it should be. These were not mere entertainment but explanations for how the world worked, why storms came and crops failed, why humans suffered and died, why beauty existed alongside cruelty, why life was difficult but still worth living, still worth celebrating. The world of Greek mythology stretches vast and endless, full of winding paths through sacred groves, populated by gods and heroes, monsters and nymphs, each with their own story, their own place in the great pattern. You need not remember every detail, every name, every connection. Let the words wash over you like gentle waves on a shore that has received waves since the world began, requiring nothing from you, asking only that you rest, that you allow yourself to sink deeper into comfort and peace, into the embrace of night and story. The ancient Greeks understood that stories could soothe as well as excite, that there was value in the telling itself, in the human voice sharing something meaningful in the darkness, in the passing of wisdom and wonder from one mind to another across the mysterious bridge of language and listening. Simply let yourself float on the sound of these words, feeling the weight of your body growing heavier, sinking deeper into whatever surface holds you, your breathing slower and easier, your thoughts quieter and farther away, like voices heard across a great distance, across ages, across the boundary between waking and sleep. The fire burns lower now. The olive wood has become embers, glowing soft and warm. The voice continues but grows more distant, blending with other night sounds, with wind and leaves, with the distant call of an owl, with your own breathing, steady and slow. Tonight you are part of that ancient tradition, a listener in the dark, allowing story to carry you gently toward rest like a boat drifting on calm water, moving without effort toward a distant shore where sleep waits with open arms. Tomorrow is far away, beyond mountains of hours you need not climb tonight. For now, there is only this moment, this quiet, this gradual release into sleep's kind embrace. The gods and titans watch over your dreams from their places in the ancient patterns, their stories complete for tonight, their voices silent, their presence a gentle weight like starlight, like the memory of sunlight, like the promise of rest. The old voice fades, the fire dims, the stars will overhead in their eternal dance, and you drift, held safe by the same darkness that existed before the world began. The same gentle absence from which all things emerged and to which all things return each night to rest and renew. Sleep well, peaceful traveler through mythic realms. Rest now in the space between stories, in the pause between heartbeats, in the soft darkness that has cradled sleepers since sleep began. All is well. All is complete. All is exactly as it should be. Rest deeply. Dream peacefully. Let go.